Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. It's so good to have you here once again, especially for today's story, one that many of you have been waiting for. This is the next chapter in the heartfelt journey of Diep and James. A love that began in hardship, survived betrayal, and finally found peace in a humble home built by hand and hope. After so many storms, heartbreaks, and trials, James, Diep, and little Nhi have at last settled into a life of quiet happiness. Their small home, tucked away in the countryside, surrounded by green fields and fruit trees, has become the symbol of everything they once dreamed of but never thought they could have. A place filled with laughter, warmth, and the kind of serenity only earned after years of pain. Every morning begins the same way. Nhi's laughter rings across the small courtyard, bright and clear like wind chimes. Diep tends to the garden, her slender hands brushing dew from the leaves, her eyes soft as she checks the rows of herbs and flowers she planted. James, meanwhile, has taken on a new rhythm of life. After years of corporate pressure, endless meetings, numbers, and expectations, he finally walked away from the shadow of his powerful father to build something of his own. He started small, an agricultural purchasing company he named after the initials of his and Diep's names. For James, it isn't just a business, it's a promise that love, trust, and perseverance can rebuild even what ambition once destroyed. And by his side, Diep remains his greatest source of strength, managing records, calling local farmers, learning how to store and preserve fresh produce. Her quiet determination complements James's vision perfectly, and in their midst, little Nhi, the child who came into their lives like sunlight after rain, continues to be the heart of their home, the laughter that fills every empty corner. But life, as we know, always has its unexpected turns, and it is in those quiet turns that the next chapter begins. That afternoon, the sunlight softened over the countryside. Golden rays filtered through the bamboo trees, painting the cracked yellow fields in shades of honey and dust. James drove slowly down a narrow dirt lane at the edge of the village, where an old, tile-roofed house sat quietly beneath a sprawling mango tree. The peaceful sound of chickens, the distant barking of dogs, and the rhythmic hum of cicadas filled the air. In the front yard, a middle-aged man was spreading out dried corn, golden kernels shimmering beneath the fading sun. The gentle scrape of the sacks against the cement ground was like the humble rhythm of a harvest song. The smell of straw, earth, and sunlight hung thick in the air, that simple, nostalgic scent of the countryside that seemed to belong to a gentler time. James smiled as he stepped closer. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked kindly. "This corn looks beautifully dried." The man wiped the sweat from his brow. "Yes, I've been at it 3 days straight," he said proudly. Both the upper and lower fields together give about 30 bags this season. James crouched down, picking up a handful of kernels. They were crisp, plump, and golden, perfectly dried, beautiful corn, he said. You've done excellent work. After some friendly bargaining, they settled at 65,000 Vietnamese dongs per bag, slightly higher than the local rate. The man hesitated. At that price, you might lose money. James smiled. That's all right. Think of it as a good start, our first partnership. The man looked at him, his weathered face softening into a grateful smile. Thank you. Not many buyers are this fair anymore. For a brief moment, they stood in silence, two men connected not by profit but by respect. The golden light bathed them both, the breeze carrying the faint scent of burning straw. And in that quiet yard, under the fading sun, James felt something stir deep inside, a quiet pride, the kind that comes only when a man begins anew with his own hands. As he was finishing his notes, James noticed a young girl running down the road. Her uniform was dusty, her hair tangled, her face streaked with sunlight and tears. The man beside him immediately dropped his sack of corn. "Where have you been, sweetheart?" he called, his voice trembling. The girl stopped, catching her breath. Then, with a firmness that seemed far too old for her age, she said quietly, "I'm going back to live with my real parents. I'm not staying here anymore." The world seemed to pause. Even the wind went still. The man stared at her, stunned, unable to move. "I've raised you all these years," he said hoarsely. "How can you just leave me?" The child lowered her head, clutching her school bag tightly. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "You raised me, but you're not my real father." The words fell like stones, sharp, cold, unforgiving. The man's weathered face crumpled with disbelief. He tried to speak, but only managed a broken whisper. "I just worry no one will love you like I do." But the girl didn't look back. Her small figure grew smaller and smaller down the dusty road, until she disappeared beyond the turn. James stood in silence, his chest heavy. In that moment, he wasn't just watching a stranger's heartbreak, he was remembering his own. All the years of loss, the moments of goodbye that had shaped his life. He placed his notebook gently on the weighing table. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. The man forced a faint smile, his eyes clouded with sorrow. "I found her one stormy night," he said. "She was just a newborn, lying under the banyan tree by the gate, soaked to the bone. I fed her, dressed her, watched her grow. And now her real parents came, and she's gone." The evening light caught the lines on his face, deep, weary, full of stories. James looked down the road, then back at him. Love doesn't need blood, he said gently. Sometimes even those bound by it don't understand each other. But if you've ever loved truly, that love will always find its way back. Maybe not today. But one day, the man nodded faintly, and in the silence that followed, the wind returned, rustling the corn husks, carrying the scent of life, loss, and something like hope. Later that afternoon, James's small truck rolled into his own yard, loaded with fencing wire, concrete posts, and bags of cement. He climbed down, rolling up his sleeves, his shirt streaked with dust, his face glowing with quiet energy. Diep, he called, his voice bright. Let's fence the garden today. One side for the vegetables, one for the chicken coop, and maybe even a corner for me to relax. Diep appeared at the porch, sleeves rolled up, hair tied neatly, a soft smile on her lips. You're really planning ahead, she teased. Just make sure the chickens don't dig everything up again. James laughed, that deep, easy laugh that seemed to make everything around him lighter. Together, they began to work. The metallic ring of the shovel, the scrape of wire, the rhythmic thud of posts sinking into the earth, all became the music of their life together. Diep carried water to moisten the soil while James dug deep holes. The scent of damp earth rose around them, raw, honest, grounding. Every now and then, he handed her a towel. Let me handle the hard work, he said softly. But Diep only smiled. It's fine. I've worked fields before, remember? This feels good. She opened a small packet of seeds, cabbage, tomato, lettuce, each tiny, fragile seed falling into the earth like a wish whispered to the future. James covered them gently, his rough hands moving with tenderness. They worked mostly in silence, but in their shared glances was a whole language of trust, gratitude, and love. By sunset, the fence stood tall and silver, glinting in the light. James stepped back, admiring their work. This is our home, Diep, he said quietly. It's not big, but it's ours. And it's built with love. Diep looked up at him, eyes shimmering like the fading sun. She didn't speak, she didn't need to. The air grew cooler. The fields turned amber. From the road came the sound of small, skipping footsteps. Miss Diep, Uncle James, I'm home. Little Nhi came running, her pink backpack bouncing, her hair undone from the day's play. James grinned, brushing dust from his hands. Did you have fun at school? Yes? She chirped. My teacher taught me a new song. Listen. Her voice rose into the air, clear, sweet, slightly off-key, but full of life. James laughed, ruffling her hair. Diep smiled from the porch, her heart full. Soon, NHI insisted on helping sweep the porch. James knelt beside her, guiding her small hands on the broom, and as she mimicked his movements, the sunlight caught in the dust between them, glittering like golden stars. Diep watched them quietly, her eyes soft. In that moment, she thought, this is it. This is family. Not bound by blood, but by the simple, unwavering warmth of love. When the fence was finally done, James tightened the last wire. The metallic click rang softly into the twilight. He stood beside Diep, both gazing at the small garden, rows of fresh soil glowing under the amber sky. Soon, we'll plant the tomatoes, Diep said, her voice gentle. James smiled. Bright red among green. Like happiness among hard days, little NHI clapped her hands. Tomorrow, we get chickens. They laughed together, their voices blending with the chorus of cicadas and the scent of evening rice cooking in nearby homes. The day ended not with grand words or gestures, but with peace. A peace they had earned, one seed, one post, one shared smile at a time. And as night fell over the small house by the grapefruit grove, a faint breeze carried their laughter into the stars. Some people sow seeds in the soil, waiting for them to grow into harvest. But people like James, Diep, and little NHI, they sow seeds of love. Of patience, of hope. They aren't just building a house. They're building a home, one born of shared hardship, forgiveness, and quiet faith. Because happiness isn't always found in success or wealth, sometimes it lives in the gentle act of planting together. Or in the sound of a child's laughter echoing through a sunset garden. Thank you for watching this chapter of Lie Too Diep and James. Stay tuned for the next episode, where a sudden visitor brings unexpected news, and the peace they've built is tested once again.